Today I am having a classic Chinese takeout dish from within China, not like Chinese American takeout, but inside China. This is probably the classic. This was the thing that people were getting as takeout before takeout was a thing, right? Before other kinds of restaurants did takeout, this was the kind of restaurant that did takeout. And it's called Hufan. So hu means box, and fan means fan technically means rice, but it often just means food or meal. In this case, it means a meal or a food, so it just means boxed food. So this is a type of restaurant that typically it's almost like a buffet style restaurant. You can eat there. Lots of people eat there, but also lots of people get it to go, and they'll just have a box, and like typically you'll get rice and then a certain number of meat dishes and a certain number of veggie dishes, and you pay based on how many meat. Typically with these things you get 4 dishes and rice, and this is a way to get sort of classic Chinese dishes, but in smaller portions so you can have a selection. Whereas like in some of the past videos, I've been ordering from like just restaurants that do these dishes, and almost always it's these huge portions that are typically meant to be table portions, right? So like the way most Chinese restaurants work is you go with a group of people and you order several dishes, and those dishes are just on the table, and everybody takes from. It's family style eating, but Hufan is designed for individual eating. So you get a box. This one is a fairly fancy one, actually. This is a pretty nice box. Sometimes they're just like styrofoam tray, basically. But then you can just see this has 4 dishes, and then underneath those there's rice. So underneath all the dishes is rice. I actually got what's the most expensive dish. So typically you'll have like basically 3 options. You can get 1 meat and 3 veggies. You can get 2 meat and 2 veggies, or you can get 3 meat and 1 veggie. And that's the most expensive one, but I tend to like the meat dishes better, so I got the 3 meat and 1 veggie. It's still quite. This is quite a cheap way to eat. This is sort of classic like working man's food in Harbin. Like this is the kind of thing that like construction workers will run into these kind of restaurants at lunchtime to get a to-go lunch or something. It's also quite popular as like a late night food. After people have been out drinking, they'll often go get this. These kind of restaurants tend to be open like, if not 24 hours, then nearly 24 hours. But you can get all kinds of, they have a broad selection of like sort of standard dishes from the region that you're in. I assume this style of like kitchen, it's kind of like a cafeteria style thing. I assume this style of cafeteria restaurant is prevalent throughout China. I don't actually know. I know that in Harbin, it's very much like they have a bunch of like local, like Harbin traditional foods. So one of those is something I'm pretty sure I've had on this channel before. This is called tudo. So tudo is potato, and su is long strips. So this is cooked potato. It's not cooked like in the West. We tend to cook potato until it's like mushy, like you're able to like mash potato style. Like that's kind of the type of potato we like. Chinese cooking often likes to have a little bit of crunch left in the potato. So a little bit more what in pasta would be called al dente, or al dente. So when you chew on this, there's a bit of a crunch to it still. And that's pretty popular with potato type things here. So with this, they'll usually what they do is they grate it. So this before this is cooked, even they'll grate it up, and then this will be cooked. I think they probably boil it a bit to get it cooked, and then they'll like mix it in with. This has some oil, like some chili oil, and some seasonings and stuff. I think it's got some vinegar in it as well. So like they'll put some like kind of seasoning juice on it, basically. Not a heavy sauce, but some kind of flavoring seasoning. That's a very common dish here. The next thing I got is called Shao Ro. So Shao is a style of cooking. It's a style of braising. And this is like slow cooked pork. Sometimes it'll be beef, but typically when you're getting a cheaper version, it tends to be pork. And it's just slow cooked in this kind of like soy sauce, really like savory sauce that it's just like cooked down in until like this literally it falls apart. Like I can just use my finger. You can see like it just completely falls apart. It's like fall apart tender. But that sauce just soaks all the way through the meat. So I would call the sauce brown, but I think it's called Shao Ro because Hong means red. And I think they're calling the sauce red. I don't quite understand that, but I think it's called Hong because of the color of the sauce they use. The other two dishes that I got are also things that I've gotten on this channel before. The first one is called宫保鸡丁. So this is chicken. It's Pao Chicken. This is very much the Harbin version. In the past, I think I've gotten some of the more like Sichuan-y versions. Pao Chicken originated in Sichuan, but many regions of China have kind of developed their own version of it, and Harbin's no exception to that. Harbin's version tends to have carrot and green pepper and chicken. Those tend to be the main ingredients, and it tends to be a bit heavier on the sweet and less heavy on the spicy. So like Sichuan宫保鸡丁will be sweet, but it will usually also be quite spicy. Harbin style tends to just be sweet. There might be like there's a teeny bit of hint of pepper basically, but it doesn't tend to be particularly spicy. It tends to just be like a sweet, a kind of sweet chicken and carrots basically. So that's called宫保鸡丁or Kung Pao Chicken. The chicken is just cut up into like little, sometimes it's cubes, sometimes these are just little pieces, little rectangles. And then there's just cut up little bits of carrot. That's Kung Pao Chicken or宫保鸡丁. And then the last thing is called Yushan Rosa. So this one I've had quite often on this channel. These are strips of pork, and it's in it's a sauce that tastes very similar to the Kung Pao chicken sauce. It's a sweet and spicy sauce. The Yushan Rosa tends to be a bit more acidic, so there might be a bit more like vinegary flavor in it, as opposed to the宫保鸡丁tends to be just sweet and spicy. So the Yushan Rosa might have a bit more of like a acid quality to it. And it's made with the same stuff. It's made with carrots, but they're cut into strips instead of cubes. And then instead of chicken, it has pork that's been cut. Well, this hasn't been cut super thoroughly, but it's been cut into long, like little strips of pork. That's the rosa. And then that sauce is called, I've explained this before, it's called Yushan, which means fish flavor, but I would not, I would struggle to identify any fish flavor in this dish. It's basically just a slightly sweet, slightly sour, and a little spicy kind of sauce. Oh yeah, and then it also has these little mushroom things. I don't know that they're technically mushrooms. They might be. They're some kind of fungus. They're called tree ear. They grow on trees and they kind of look like an ear shape, and they're black, and so they're called tree ears. But I think I've heard in English them called tree ear mushrooms. So I think they are a type of mushroom. They're fairly different than most of your kind of standard mushrooms you would get. They're quite, I'm not sure chewy's the right word. They have like a snap to them when you bite them. So like as you put your teeth into it, there's pressure, then pressure and pressure, and then it just snaps. But they're still soft and I'm not sure the right way to describe that, but it has a bit of a snap to it, but it's still quite soft. And then underneath all of it, there's just rice. Right, so you get a bed of rice with your 4 dishes on it. And the way this works at the restaurant, I got it to go, so I just like clicked on the things I wanted. Or I got it delivery in an app, so I clicked on the things I wanted in the app. But if you go into the restaurant, what you'll do is there'll be a basically like a buffet kind of thing, or maybe more like a cafeteria style thing. So, or a lot of these actually don't have like a real setup. They're usually very cheap restaurants, so a lot of them will just have a table with a bunch of dishes set up, kind of like you might have at a family Thanksgiving or something, where you just have a big table with a bunch of food lined up on it in pots. And basically there'll be someone there, and you come in and you tell them what things you want. You just say, I want this and this and this and this. And then you go, either if you're going to eat there, you tell them you're going to eat there or to go. And you tell them the things you want, and then either you go sit down or you wait, and they get either a tray, a plate for you to eat at the place, or just a box tray like this. And they put a bed of rice, and then they just put the stuff on. Some places might have a different tray where they have a little cubicle of rice and then the 4 things around it or something. So, you know, the box might be different, but basically you get a serving of rice and then one little small dollop of each of these dishes. If the dishes are more expensive things, like the heavier meat dishes, you tend to get a smaller portion. As you can see with this, like I got a much bigger portion of these potatoes than of the meat. So like, you know, they balance it out so they end up being similar. Everything's like similar price, so they don't actually charge you based on what dishes you got. They just charge you. Most places charge you by the number of dishes you got, like how many meats and how many veggies. That's the pretty standard thing I've seen. Although I have also seen places that charge you by weight. So they'll just have a thing and it's like price per, the Chinese pound is called jin. So 1 jin is half a kilogram. So like slightly more than an American pound or a you know, imperial pound or whatever. But historically it wasn't exactly that, but sometime I think in the early 1900s, all of the historical Chinese measurements were adjusted to easily fit into the metric system. So unlike in America, say, where we kind of rejected the metric system and just kept the old system, or in England where they kept both side by side, but they don't really like you just have to kind of know how they match up. In China, they basically just said, okay, this metric system makes sense. We don't want to lose our old system. We'll just slightly adjust. So the jin historically was a slightly different weight, and they changed it slightly so that it was equal to exactly half of 1 kilogram. So now in the Chinese measurement system, all of their measurements, their historical measurements, are also based precisely on kilograms as well. And they did that with all of their historical measurements. There's also like a Chinese inch and all these things, but it's all based on the metric system. So you don't have to choose which one to use. They're interchangeable, and they all, everything can be easily converted into metric without like having to know crazy weird, having to know 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers, or 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds, So in the American one, you kind of have to know all these weird conversions. But in the Chinese historical system, they adjusted it so it's all easy things like 2 jin is 1 kilo. It's just a half a kilo. They just made a new name for half a kilo, and things like that. But so a lot of places like this, it's not as common. I think it used to be more common, and I think it's a little less common now. But a lot of places like this used to do, you just pay by weight. Like if it's this price for 1 jin, this price for 2 jin. So however much you get, you just pay by how much it weighs. That was a very common way for a lot of the kind of cheap and quick fast food, like historical fast food, not like Western style fast food, but like historical, like Chinese fast food in this region. There's a few other dishes or like specialty type restaurant things that are classic fast food restaurants or cheap food restaurants. And like almost all of them, it's just like you buy the food and then like basically you just pay for how much food you got. And it's not literally like paying by like this dish costs this much. But so this is my my hufan, I'm having it for dinner now. I know this channel is called lunch, but I'm having dinner. So this is my box dinner. And I'll finish up eating this, and thanks for watching.